The transport ship descended through thick purple clouds before breaking into clear sky. Below sprawled the largest military academy Jake Morrison had ever seen. Massive stone structures stretched across the rocky terrain, each building larger than any human construction. This was Krathvar, home planet of the Vektari Empire, and Jake was the first human to ever visit their warrior academy. Jake pressed his face against the viewport. His reflection stared back at him, a young Marine with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this place. The journey across space had given him plenty of time to question his decision. Plenty of time to wonder if he was making a terrible mistake. Captain Lisa Grant sat across from him. She was his commanding officer and the only other human on this mission. She had been quiet for most of the trip, reviewing files and data about the Vektari. Now she looked at him with concern. "You can still back out," Lisa said quietly. "Nobody would blame you. The Vektari didn't expect us to actually accept their invitation." Jake shook his head. "That's exactly why I have to do this. They think we're weak. They think humans hide behind our technology because we can't fight like they do. Maybe we are different from them," Lisa replied. "That doesn't make us weak. It just makes us different." "Then I'll show them how humans are different," Jake said. The ship landed on a broad platform. The moment the doors opened, Jake felt the difference. The gravity here was stronger than Earth normal. Not enough to crush him, but enough that every step would require more effort. The air tasted strange, metallic and thin. His lungs worked harder to pull in oxygen. A delegation of Vektari warriors waited on the platform. They were impressive creatures. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with thick, armored skin that looked like interlocking plates of gray stone. Their eyes glowed a faint yellow and their mouths held rows of sharp teeth. These were beings built for war. The lead Vektari stepped forward. His armor bore marks of high rank and a long scar ran across his face. "I am Commander Zekthrul," he said in heavily accented but clear English. "I lead the combat training at this academy. You are the human?" "Lieutenant Jake Morrison, sir," Jake replied, standing straight despite the heavy gravity. Zekthrul circled him slowly, examining him like a strange specimen. "Small, thin skin, no natural armor or weapons. You are even weaker than the report suggested." Several other Vektari made a sound that Jake realized was laughter. It sounded like grinding rocks. "We come to learn from each other," Lisa said firmly. "That was the agreement between our governments." "Yes, the agreement," Zekthrul said with clear disdain. "We will honor it. The human may observe our training. He may watch real warriors prepare for battle. Perhaps he will learn something useful." Jake felt heat rise in his chest. He had expected contempt, but experiencing it directly was different. These aliens looked at him like he was a child playing dress-up in a soldier's uniform. They were led through the academy grounds. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw Vektari cadets training. Some practiced hand-to-hand combat with a ferocity that would have hospitalized human fighters. Others ran obstacle courses that looked designed to kill rather than train. Pain seemed to mean nothing to them. He watched one cadet take a blow that should have shattered bone, only to shake it off and continue fighting. "Impressive," Lisa whispered to Jake. "Their physiology is remarkable." "They're tough," Jake agreed. But tough isn't everything. Zekthrul led them to a large arena at the center of the academy. Hundreds of Vektari filled the stands, all watching as cadets below fought through various trials. The commander gestured broadly at the spectacle. "This is where we separate the strong from the weak," Zekthrul announced. "Only those who can endure become true warriors. The rest are cast out." "What exactly are they enduring?" Jake asked. Zekthrul's expression changed to something that might have been a smile. "Pain, human, pure pain. We have devices that stimulate every nerve, creating agony without actual damage. A warrior must learn to fight through pain, to think through pain, to function when their body screams at them to stop." Jake watched a cadet in the arena stumble through an obstacle course. The cadet's body shook with obvious pain, but he continued moving forward, climbing walls and leaping across gaps. Finally, the cadet collapsed. Other Vektari pulled him from the arena. "Your kind could never endure such a trial," Zekthrul said to Jake. "Your soft bodies and softer minds would break in minutes." Something in the commander's tone pushed Jake past his better judgment. "I'd like to try," he heard himself say. Lisa grabbed his arm. "Jake, no. We don't know what that would do to a human nervous system. I volunteer to attempt your trial. Jake said louder, looking directly at Zekthril. The entire arena fell silent. Hundreds of yellow eyes turned toward the human. The silence stretched on for several heartbeats. Then Zekthril laughed, a deep rumbling sound. You? You wish to face the crucible of endurance? Human, that trial has broken Vektari warriors. Cadets train their entire lives to prepare for it. Many still fail. Then let me fail, Jake said. Or let me surprise you. Zekthril studied him with new interest. You understand this is not a simple test. The crucible lasts 3 full days, 72 hours of pain, exhaustion, deprivation, and trial. If you fail, you will be disgraced. If you quit, you will prove everything we believe about human weakness. I understand, Jake said, though his heart was pounding. Jake, this is insane, Lisa hissed. We have no data on how human physiology will react to their pain devices. This could cause permanent damage, or it could show them that humans are stronger than they think, Jake replied quietly. Zekthril made a gesture, and several other instructors approached. They spoke rapidly in their own language, clearly debating. Finally, Zekthril turned back to Jake. Very well, human. I accept your request. You will face the crucible of endurance alongside our cadets. The trial begins at dawn tomorrow. That gives you 1 night to prepare, or to come to your senses and withdraw. I won't withdraw, Jake said. We shall see, Zekthril replied. I have never seen a human face real pain before. Tomorrow will be educational for all of us. That night, Jake lay in the quarters assigned to him. The bed was too large and too hard, designed for Vektari bodies. Sleep refused to come. His mind kept replaying everything he had seen, the casual violence of Vektari training, the contempt in their eyes, the certainty that he would fail. Lisa came to his room just before midnight. There's still time to back out, she said. I know, Jake replied. This isn't about pride, is it? She asked. This is about something else, Jake sat up. Back on Earth, do you know what the Vektari call us? The soft ones. They tell other species that humans got lucky, that we stumbled into space travel before we grew up. They say we're not real warriors, just clever children playing at war. And you think one trial will change their minds? Maybe not all of them, Jake admitted. But maybe some. Maybe enough. Humans have been underestimated before. We've always proven doubters wrong. Lisa nodded slowly. All right, then do it. But Jake, you don't have to destroy yourself to prove a point. If it becomes too much, there's no shame in stopping. I'll remember that, Jake said, though both of them knew he was lying. Dawn came too quickly. Jake stood at the entrance to the arena, wearing only light training clothes. 5 Vektari cadets stood beside him, each one looking at him with mixture of curiosity and pity. They were about to witness something unprecedented, a human attempting the crucible. Zekthril stood before them all. The trial begins now, he announced. May the strongest endure. The doors to the first trial opened, and Jake Morrison walked forward into pain. The first chamber was smaller than Jake expected. White walls surrounded a pathway that stretched about 200 meters ahead. The path was filled with obstacles, walls to climb, gaps to jump, and barriers to crawl under. It looked simple enough. Then the pain started. It hit Jake like lightning through his entire body. Every nerve screamed at once. His muscles locked up and he fell to his knees. The pain was everywhere and nowhere. A fire that burned without heat, a pressure that crushed without weight. His vision went white for several seconds. Through the haze, Jake heard Zekthril's voice over speakers. This is the pain gauntlet. Neural disruptors create the sensation of pain throughout your body. The intensity increases as you progress. You must reach the end while the devices are active. Begin. Jake tried to stand. His legs shook and nearly gave out. He looked to his left and saw the Vektari cadets already moving forward. They grimaced and their muscles trembled, but they pushed through. Their natural durability helped them resist the worst effects. Jake took 1 step forward. The pain spiked. His body wanted to curl into a ball. His mind wanted to shut down and escape. But he took another step, then another. He had read about pain in training. The instructors back on Earth had taught him that pain was a signal, nothing more. It told you something was wrong, but it couldn't actually stop you unless you let it. The trick was acknowledging the pain without letting it control you. Jake started talking to himself, counting his steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. The numbers gave his mind something to focus on besides the agony. He reached the first obstacle, a wall about 10 feet high. Climbing it felt impossible. Every muscle burned. But he grabbed the first handhold and pulled himself up. His hand slipped twice. His arms shook so badly he thought they would give out. But he made it over the wall and dropped to the other side. The impact sent new waves of pain through his legs. Jake screamed but kept moving. The Vektari cadets were ahead of him. Their superior strength let them power through obstacles that forced Jake to struggle. But he noticed something. They were fighting the pain head-on, using raw toughness to push through. Jake couldn't do that. His human body wasn't built that way. Instead, Jake went somewhere else in his mind. He remembered marathon training back on Earth. His old coach had taught him to separate his consciousness from his body during long runs. The body would hurt, would beg to stop, but the mind could observe that pain from a distance. It was a meditation technique, older than modern civilization. Jake found that mental space now. The pain was still there, massive and overwhelming, but it became background noise. He could think around it, function despite it. His movements became more fluid, not faster but steadier. He crawled under a barrier, jumped across a gap, climbed another wall. The pain increased with each obstacle, but Jake had found his rhythm. His body moved on autopilot while his mind drifted in that distant, quiet place. When Jake finally crossed the finish line, he collapsed immediately. His body had been running on pure determination. Now it demanded rest. He lay on the floor, chest heaving, sweat pouring from his skin in streams. The pain devices shut off. The relief was so intense that Jake almost laughed. He heard the Vektari cadets around him, breathing hard but recovering quickly. Jake took longer. His human body needed more time to calm down. Zekthril entered the chamber with several other instructors. They examined the cadets, checking vital signs and performance data. When they reached Jake, Zekthril looked surprised. 18 minutes and 43 seconds, the commander said, reading from a data pad. Not the fastest time, but far better than expected. Most outsiders collapse within 5 minutes when exposed to neural disruptors. Jake managed to sit up. His whole body ached, but it was natural pain now, not the artificial agony from before. How did the others do? The fastest cadet completed the course in 12 minutes, Zekthril replied. But they have trained for this. You have not. Perhaps you are less weak than you appear, human. It wasn't exactly praise, but Jake heard the shift in tone. Respect, even grudging respect, was better than contempt. The first trial is complete, Zekthril announced. You have 1 hour to rest and consume rations. Then the second trial begins. The second trial was called the deprivation chamber. Jake was led to a small room, barely large enough to lie down in. The walls were bare metal. A tiny portion of food and water waited on a tray, nowhere near enough for a full meal. Zekthril explained the rules. You will remain here for 36 hours. Temperature will fluctuate from freezing to extreme heat. You will not be permitted to sleep. Every 2 hours, pain stimuli will activate for 15 minutes. This trial breaks the mind more than the body. It teaches warriors to function without comfort, without rest, without mercy. The door sealed shut. Jake was alone. The first few hours were manageable. Jake sat in meditation, controlling his breathing, keeping his mind calm. When the temperature dropped, he shivered but did exercises to keep his blood moving. When it rose, he stripped down and tried to conserve energy. The food and water were barely enough to sustain him. Jake rationed carefully, taking small sips and tiny bites spread across hours. He had trained for survival situations before. Deprivation was nothing new, though this was more extreme than anything Earth could offer. Sleep was the hardest part. Every time Jake's eyes started to close, loud sounds blasted through the chamber. Or the temperature would spike. Or the walls would vibrate. His body screamed for rest, but rest was forbidden. When the pain stimuli activated, Jake used the same mental separation technique from the first trial. The pain came in waves, crashing over him like an ocean, but he floated on top of those waves, letting them pass beneath him without dragging him under. To keep his mind sharp, Jake started reciting everything he could remember. Poetry from school, the periodic table of elements, regulations from the Marine Handbook. He did math problems in his head, calculated trajectories and supply requirements, anything to keep his brain active and alert. Hours blurred together. Jake lost track of time. Hot became cold, became hot again. Pain came and went. His stomach cramped from hunger. His throat felt like sandpaper from thirst. But he endured. Outside the chamber, Vektari instructors monitored all the participants. One instructor named Krathvin watched Jake's readings with growing interest. The human's vital signs showed extreme stress but also showed adaptation. His heart rate varied, rising during trials and falling during rest periods. His brain activity remained high despite the sleep deprivation. The human is not resisting the trials, Krathvin observed. He is adapting to them. See how his body temperature regulates? He sweats when hot, shivers when cold. Our cadets do not have such efficient cooling systems. Zekthral studied the data. Interesting. Humans evolved on a world with extreme temperature variations. Perhaps this trial is less alien to him than we assumed. More than that, Krathvin said. Look at his brain patterns during pain stimuli. He is not fighting the pain with raw endurance. He is processing it, managing it, finding ways to cope rather than simply endure. We shall see if such tricks carry him through the remaining trials, Zekthral replied, but his tone was less dismissive than before. The 36 hours finally ended. The chamber door opened and Jake stumbled out into the light. His legs barely supported him. His eyes hurt from the brightness, but he was still conscious, still functional. 4 of the 5 Vectari cadets emerged from their chambers in similar condition. The 5th had to be carried out, having collapsed from exhaustion in the final hours. Jake felt a grim satisfaction knowing he had outlasted at least one of the supposedly superior warriors. You have completed 2 trials, Zekthral announced. 1 cadet has failed and been removed from the crucible. The rest of you will now face the 3rd trial, the Burden March. You have 2 hours to prepare. Jake used those 2 hours to eat, drink, and rest his eyes. Lisa came to check on him, bringing extra food from the human supplies they had brought. The Vectari instructors are talking about you, she said quietly. They didn't think you would make it this far. Neither did I, Jake admitted. His hands shook as he lifted food to his mouth. But I'm still here. The next trial is physical endurance. Can your body handle it after everything you've been through? Jake looked at his hands. They trembled with exhaustion. His legs ached. His mind felt foggy from lack of sleep. By any reasonable measure, he should quit now before he did permanent damage. Humans are endurance hunters, Jake said slowly. We're built to keep going when everything else stops. I have to believe that means something here. Lisa nodded. Then show them what humans can do. The Burden March began at dawn on the 2nd day. Jake stood with the remaining 4 Vectari cadets at the edge of a vast wilderness. The terrain ahead looked brutal. Rocky hills covered in sharp stones, deep ravines, and steep climbs. The course stretched for 50 kilometers. Each participant received a pack weighing 60 pounds. For the Vectari, this was manageable weight. For Jake, it was significant but not impossible. However, Zekthral explained that weight would be added at checkpoints throughout the march. You will also face combat simulations at random intervals, the commander announced. You must make tactical decisions while exhausted and in pain. Warriors do not fight only when they are fresh and ready. They fight when they are broken and bleeding. This trial teaches that lesson. Jake shouldered his pack and started walking. The heavy gravity of this planet made every step harder than it would have been on Earth. Combined with his exhaustion from the previous trials, the march immediately became agony. The Vectari cadets pulled ahead quickly. Their superior strength let them handle the weight more easily. Jake settled into a steady pace, 1 foot in front of the other, breathing controlled and even. This was familiar territory. Humans had been distance walkers for millions of years. After the first hour, Jake noticed something interesting. The Vectari cadets were slowing down. Their initial burst of strength was fading. Meanwhile, Jake maintained his steady pace. His human body, designed for persistence rather than power, found its rhythm. By the 2nd hour, Jake had caught up to the slowest Vectari cadet. The alien looked at him with surprise as the human passed. Jake didn't gloat. He just kept walking, steady and mechanical. The first checkpoint appeared after 15 kilometers. Each participant received an additional 20 pounds of weight. Jake nearly buckled under the new load. 80 pounds on top of exhaustion and pain pushed him to his limits. But he adjusted the pack, redistributed the weight, and continued. The terrain grew worse. Steep climbs forced Jake to scramble on hands and knees. Descents jarred his already aching legs. The sun beat down mercilessly. This was where Jake's biology showed another advantage. Sweat poured from his skin, cooling him efficiently. The Vectari had no such system. They panted and slowed, their bodies overheating under exertion. The first combat simulation hit without warning. Holographic enemies appeared on all sides. Jake had to make split-second decisions about threat assessment and response while his mind was foggy with exhaustion. He performed adequately, neutralizing threats and advancing. But at the second simulation, Jake made a critical error. A hologram representing a civilian appeared mixed among enemies. In his exhausted state, Jake fired at it before his conscious mind could stop the action. The simulation ended with a harsh buzzer. "Casualty," announced the automated system. "Civilian killed by friendly fire." Jake stood frozen, horror washing over him even though he knew it was just a simulation. In a real scenario, his mistake would have cost an innocent life. The weight of that realization was worse than any physical burden. At the next checkpoint, Zekthral was waiting. The commander's face showed grim satisfaction. The human has failed the tactical assessment. Exhaustion caused a fatal error in judgment. This proves that endurance without mental clarity is worthless. Before Jake could respond, another voice spoke up. He has not failed the march itself. An older Vektari stepped forward. This was Krathvin, the instructor who had been monitoring Jake's performance. His armor bore marks of countless battles, and his eyes held a wisdom that Zekthral's lacked. The human made one error in his third simulation. Krathvin continued. 2 of our cadets made errors in their first. 1 has already been removed from the trial for tactical failure. The human has outperformed our expectations at every stage. He deserves to complete the march. Zekthral's expression darkened, but he could not argue with a senior instructor. Very well. Continue, all of you. The march resumed. Jake walked beside Krathvin for a distance. The old warrior spoke quietly. I have been studying your species, human. I have read accounts of your wars, your struggles, your survival. Why? Jake asked, surprised. Because I am old enough to question assumptions, Krathvin replied. The young assume the Vektari way is the only way. But I have fought many battles, seen many species. Each has their own strength. I wanted to understand yours. They walked in silence for a while. Then Krathvin asked, Tell me about persistence hunting. I read about it but do not fully understand. Jake gathered his thoughts. Millions of years ago, humans hunted by chasing animals. We weren't fast enough to catch them in a sprint. But we could jog for hours following tracks, never stopping. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion. We would simply walk up and kill it. You ran your prey to death, Krathvin said slowly, not with strength or speed, but with the refusal to stop. Exactly, Jake confirmed. Humans are built for that. Our legs, our cooling system, our ability to carry water and food, everything evolved to let us keep moving when other creatures had to rest. Krathvin nodded thoughtfully. And this is why you continue now when logic says you should quit. Your body is designed to ignore the signals that tell other species to stop. It's more than just the body, Jake said. It's mental. Humans are stubborn. We do things that make no sense just to prove we can. We climb mountains, run marathons, push ourselves to limits for no practical reason except to see if we can survive it. Fascinating, Krathvin murmured. We Vektari endure through physical superiority. We have redundant organs, reinforced bones, natural armor. We survive because our bodies are built to absorb damage, but you survive through something else entirely. At the final checkpoint, each participant received another 20 pounds. Jake staggered under the weight of 120 pounds. His legs trembled. His back screamed. But he kept walking. Only 3 cadets remained in the trial now, 2 Vektari and Jake. They reached the final stretch as the sun began to set. The finish line lay just 5 kilometers ahead, but those 5 kilometers were straight uphill. Jake's vision narrowed to a tunnel. He could see only the path directly ahead. His body moved on pure automation, muscle memory taking over when conscious thought became too difficult. Left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. One of the Vektari cadets collapsed. The warrior's legs simply gave out. Muscles pushed beyond their capacity. Medical personnel rushed to help, removing the cadet from the course. Now only Jake and 1 Vektari remained. They climbed the final hill together, neither speaking, both too exhausted for words. The Vektari was stronger, but Jake was lighter, and the altitude affected him less. They matched pace step for step. The finish line appeared ahead. Both participants crossed it simultaneously and collapsed on the other side. Jake lay on his back, staring at the purple sky. His entire body was numb. He had never been so tired in his life, but he had finished. He had completed the burden march. Krathvin appeared above him, offering a canteen of water. "Well done, human. You have surprised many today." Jake drank deeply, the water like heaven on his parched throat. "How many cadets usually complete the march?" "About half," Krathvin replied. "You have done what most Vectari cannot, and you have taught us something valuable." "What's that?" Jake asked. "That endurance takes many forms," the old warrior said. "Your body is weaker than ours in almost every measurable way, yet you matched our best cadet step for step. This tells us that we have been measuring strength incorrectly." Zekthril approached, his expression unreadable. "The human has completed 3 trials. 2 remain. The final trials are combined into one test, the Gauntlet of Resolve. It begins tomorrow at dawn." "What is the Gauntlet?" Jake asked. "The ultimate test," Zekthril replied. "Combat simulation with no possibility of victory. The question is not whether you will fall, but when. It measures a warrior's spirit, their refusal to surrender even in the face of certain defeat." Jake closed his eyes. Sounds perfect for a human. That night, Jake could barely move. Every muscle in his body had locked up. Lisa helped him to his quarters and brought medical supplies. "You're destroying yourself," she said bluntly. "Your body can't take much more of this." "Just one more trial," Jake replied. "Then it's over." "Jake, the gauntlet sounds like it's designed to break you, to push you until you literally cannot continue. Then they'll see how far a human can go before breaking," Jake said. "They'll see that we don't quit easy." Lisa sighed. "You're the stubbornest person I've ever met." "That's what makes me human," Jake replied with a tired smile. In another part of the academy, Krathvin met with Zekthril privately. "The human will attempt the gauntlet tomorrow." "Yes," Zekthril confirmed. "And he will fail. No amount of mental tricks will help him when facing overwhelming force. His weak body will give out quickly." "Perhaps," Krathvin said, "or perhaps we are about to learn something about human endurance that will change how we view this species." "What could we possibly learn from watching a human collapse in combat?" Zekthril asked. Krathvin smiled. "How long it takes." Dawn arrived cold and gray. Jake stood at the entrance to the combat arena, his body a collection of aches and pains. He had barely slept, his muscles too sore to find comfortable rest. Every movement hurt. Walking hurt. Breathing hurt. But he was still standing. Only one Vectari cadet remained in the crucible alongside him. The alien warrior looked tired but determined. They had survived 3 brutal trials together. Now came the 4th and final test. The arena was massive, easily the size of a football field. Holographic projectors lined the walls and ceiling. Weapon racks stood at the entrance, offering a variety of training weapons. All were modified to deliver pain feedback when landing hits, but caused no actual damage. Zekthril addressed both participants. "The Gauntlet of Resolve is simple in concept, impossible in execution. You will face waves of simulated enemies. They will not stop. They will not tire. You cannot win this battle. The only question is how long you can last before you fall." He gestured to the arena. "Average Vectari cadets last 45 minutes. The best have endured for 90 minutes. The record is 2 hours and 7 minutes, set 15 years ago by a warrior who later became a general." Jake looked at the weapons available. He selected a rifle and a combat knife, both familiar to human military training. The Vectari cadet chose heavier weapons suited to their superior strength. "You may begin when ready," Zekthril announced. "There is no shame in falling, only in not trying." Jake and the Vectari cadet entered the arena together. For a moment everything was quiet. Then the simulation began. Holographic enemies materialized from all directions. They looked like various hostile species the Vectari had fought over the centuries. Each moved with realistic combat behavior, taking cover, coordinating attacks, using tactics. The Vectari cadet roared and charged forward, meeting the enemy head-on. This was the Vectari way, aggressive and direct. The cadet's strength and ferocity cleared a path through the first wave, but more enemies appeared immediately, filling the gaps. Jake took a different approach. He found cover behind a barrier and picked his targets carefully. He conserved ammunition, made every shot count, and stayed mobile. When enemies closed in, he retreated to new positions. He was not trying to win, just trying to survive as long as possible. The first 15 minutes passed in a blur of action. Jake's body screamed at him to stop. His exhausted muscles protested every movement. But he had found a rhythm, a pattern of movement and fire that kept him alive. At 30 minutes, the Vektari cadet began to slow. Even with their superior physiology, the constant combat was wearing them down. The cadet took more hits, made more mistakes. At 42 minutes, a simulated enemy blade struck a killing blow. The cadet fell, eliminated from the simulation. Jake was alone now, facing endless waves of enemies. His rifle ran out of ammunition. He switched to the knife, fighting at close range. A holographic blade struck his ribs, sending feedback pain through his body. He stumbled but kept moving. 1 hour passed. Jake's movements had become purely instinctive. His conscious mind had retreated to that distant, quiet place he had found during the pain gauntlet. His body fought on autopilot, responding to threats without thinking. In the observation room, the Vektari instructors watched in growing amazement. Zekthril stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. Krathvin smiled, an expression of deep satisfaction on his weathered face. He has passed the average time, one instructor observed. The human is still fighting. Look at his technique, another said. He is not fighting like us. He conserves energy, retreats when necessary, uses the environment. These are survival tactics, not warrior tactics. Survival is what humans do best, Krathvin said quietly. Outside the observation room, Lisa watched through a window. Tears ran down her face as she saw Jake stumbling through the arena, bleeding from a dozen simulated wounds, barely able to hold his weapon. But still fighting, 90 minutes. Jake went down hard, a simulated blow to his leg. He could not stand. His leg would not support weight. So he crawled, dragging himself behind cover, fighting from the ground. When enemies approached, he lashed out with the knife, desperate and wild. 2 hours. Jake had surpassed the academy record. The observation room erupted in shocked conversation. No outsider, no cadet had ever lasted this long. And still the human continued. His movements were barely human anymore. When knocked down, he rose like a machine being restarted. When disarmed, he used his hands and feet. When surrounded, he fought with a mindless ferocity born of pure survival instinct. 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Time lost meaning in the arena. Jake existed in a state beyond pain, beyond exhaustion, beyond rational thought. His body had become a thing separate from his mind, moving and fighting through pure muscle memory and stubborn will. The Vektari instructors had gone silent. They were witnessing something they had never seen before, something that challenged everything they understood about endurance and combat. At 6 hours, Jake could no longer see clearly. His vision was a blur of shapes and movement. He swung his weapon at anything that moved, hitting more by luck than skill. Blood ran from his nose and ears from the constant feedback pain. His body was shutting down, but some deep part of his brain refused to let it stop. End the simulation, Krathvin said quietly. No, Zekthril replied, his voice strange. Let him decide when to stop. This is his trial. 7 hours and 18 minutes after the simulation began, Jake Morrison collapsed for the final time. His body simply stopped responding to commands. He lay on the arena floor unconscious, his hand still gripping the training knife. Medical teams rushed into the arena. They carefully loaded Jake onto a stretcher and carried him to the medical facility. Lisa ran alongside, calling his name, but he did not respond. In the observation room, the Vektari instructors stood in stunned silence. Finally, Zekthril spoke, his voice filled with something that might have been awe. 7 hours and 18 minutes. The human lasted 7 hours and 18 minutes. He lasted longer than any Vektari in the history of this academy, Krathvin said, and he did it after completing 3 other trials that left him exhausted and injured. He did it with a body weaker than ours, with no natural advantages, with nothing but will. How is this possible? A young instructor asked. His species is not physically superior. Their pain tolerance is documented as average at best. By every measure, he should have failed. We have been measuring incorrectly, Zekthril said slowly. The commander looked shaken, his certainty crumbled. We measured physical endurance, structural durability, pain resistance. We never thought to measure what the human possesses. What is that? The young instructor asked. Krathvin answered. The refusal to stop. The ability of the mind to override the body's survival instincts. Humans evolved to keep moving when everything else collapsed. They persistence hunted across continents. They crossed oceans in wooden ships. They walked to the ends of their world just to see what was there. Their greatest strength is not their body. It is their mind's absolute refusal to accept defeat. This changes everything. Zekthril said quietly. We called them weak. We mocked them. But we were wrong. They are not weak. They are just strong in a way we never understood. In the medical facility, Jake lay unconscious for hours. His body had gone into complete shutdown, requiring rest to recover from the impossible demands he had placed on it. Lisa sat beside his bed holding his hand. When Jake finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Lisa's relieved face. Hey, he croaked, his voice barely working. Hey yourself, Lisa replied, wiping tears from her eyes. You stubborn, crazy, wonderful idiot. Did I pass? Jake asked. Lisa laughed, the sound caught between joy and exhaustion. You didn't just pass, Jake, you broke their record. You lasted longer than any warrior in the history of their academy. The Vektari are calling it impossible. They are questioning everything they thought they knew about combat endurance. Jake closed his eyes. Good. Maybe now they will stop calling us weak. They will never call humans weak again, Lisa promised. You showed them what we are capable of. The door opened. Krathvin and Zekthril entered the medical room. Both warriors carried themselves with a formality that suggested great importance. Zekthril spoke first, his tone completely different from their first meeting. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, on behalf of the Vektari Empire and this academy, I offer you formal apology. I judged your species based on incomplete understanding. I assumed physical weakness meant overall weakness. I was wrong. You have taught us a valuable lesson. Krathvin added, you have shown us that endurance comes in many forms. Your performance in the Crucible will be studied and remembered. You have earned a place in our history. Jake managed a weak smile. Does this mean humans are real warriors now? You were always real warriors, Zekthril replied. We were simply too blind to see it. 3 days passed before Jake could walk without assistance. His body had been pushed beyond normal limits and needed time to heal. The Vektari medical staff treated him with careful respect. Their attitude completely changed from the dismissive contempt of his arrival. On the 4th day, Jake was cleared to leave the medical facility. He walked slowly through the academy grounds, still sore but recovering. Everywhere he went, Vektari cadets stopped to watch him pass. Some nodded in acknowledgement. Others made gestures that Krathvin later explained were signs of respect among warriors. Lisa accompanied him to a formal gathering in the main hall. The massive chamber was filled with instructors, cadets, and senior warriors from across the Empire. Jake felt incredibly small among all these powerful aliens, but he walked with his head held high. Commander Zekthril stood at the center of the hall. When Jake entered, the commander raised his hand for silence. The room fell quiet immediately. We gather to acknowledge an unprecedented achievement, Zekthril began. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, human, has completed the Crucible of Endurance. More than that, he has exceeded the performance of every cadet in the history of this academy. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Many of these warriors had heard rumors but not confirmed details. The human lasted 7 hours and 18 minutes in the Gauntlet of Resolve. Zekthril continued. This shatters our previous record by more than 5 hours. He accomplished this after completing 3 other trials while exhausted and injured. He did this with a physiology weaker than our own in almost every measurable way. Zekthril turned to face Jake directly. I owe you an apology, Lieutenant. I called you weak. I dismissed your species as inferior. I was wrong on every count. You have proven that humans possess a form of endurance that we Vektari do not fully understand, but must learn to respect. The commander made a formal gesture, pressing his fist to his chest and bowing slightly. Every Vektari in the hall repeated the gesture. Jake, overwhelmed, returned the bow as best he could. Krathvin stepped forward next. I have spent the past days studying human military history more deeply. What I have learned astonishes me. Your species has a pattern of endurance that appears throughout your wars and struggles. He activated a display screen showing various images from Earth's history. The Shosen Reservoir, where human soldiers fought in freezing temperatures while surrounded by superior numbers. The Kokoda Trail, where humans marched through jungle and disease. The Siege of Stalingrad, where your kind fought for months and destroyed cities. These are just examples among thousands, Krathvin continued. In every case, humans face situations that should have broken them. Superior enemy forces, harsh environments, lack of supplies. Yet they endured, not because their bodies were superior, but because their minds refused to accept defeat. An older warrior in the crowd spoke up. But surely this is common among warrior species. We Vectari also fight through adversity. Yes, Krathven agreed. But there is a difference. We Vectari endure through physical superiority. Our redundant organs keep us alive when others would die. Our armored skin protects us from damage. Our strength lets us overcome obstacles. We survive because our bodies are built to absorb punishment. He gestured to Jake. Humans survive differently. Their bodies are fragile compared to ours. They lack natural armor, redundant systems, enhanced strength. Yet they endure longer than they should. They push past the point where their bodies tell them to stop. They override their own survival instincts through pure mental will. This is the human advantage, Zekthril added. They are persistence predators. They evolved to chase prey across continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. This same quality makes them formidable warriors. They do not know when to quit, because their ancestors who quit starved to death. A young cadet asked, "How do we defend against such an enemy? If they refuse to surrender, how can they be defeated?" "That is the question, is it not?" Krathven said with a slight smile. "It is far better to have such warriors as allies than enemies." "Which brings us to a proposal." Zekthril spoke again. "Lieutenant Morrison, the Vectari Empire wishes to offer you a permanent position as an instructor at this academy. We want you to teach our cadets about human endurance tactics and mental fortitude. Help us understand this quality your species possesses." Jake was stunned. "You want me to teach your warriors?" "We want to learn from you," Zekthril corrected. "The exchange program was meant to be mutual. We can teach humans about physical combat and durability. You can teach us about mental endurance and persistence. Both species will benefit." Jake looked at Lisa, who smiled and nodded. He turned back to Zekthril. "I accept, sir. It would be an honor." The hall erupted in approving sounds, the Vectari version of applause. Jake felt warmth spread through his chest, pride mixed with relief. He had come here to prove humans were not weak. He had succeeded beyond his wildest hopes. Over the following weeks, Jake began his new role as instructor. His first class consisted of 20 Vectari cadets, all eager to understand the human who had beaten their academy record. Jake started with basics. "Human endurance is not magic," he explained. "It comes from millions of years of evolution. Our ancestors survived by outlasting prey and predators. We developed physical and mental traits that support long-distance persistence." He had the cadets run laps around the training ground. "Notice how I sweat more than you? This is efficient cooling. Humans can run in heat that would kill most species because we radiate heat through our skin. This gave our ancestors an advantage on the African savanna." The cadets struggled with the concept. Their bodies did not cool the same way. They had to learn that different species evolved different solutions to the same problems. Next, Jake taught them about mental endurance. Pain is information. It tells you something is wrong. But you can choose how to respond to that information. You can let it stop you, or you can acknowledge it and continue anyway. He led them through meditation exercises, teaching them the mental separation techniques he had used during the Crucible. Many cadets found this difficult. The Vectari way was to power through pain with raw toughness. Learning to manage pain through mental discipline was foreign to them. "Your bodies are stronger than mine," Jake told them honestly. "You can take more damage and keep fighting. But humans have learned to push our weaker bodies further than they should go. We trick our minds into ignoring the signals that say stop. This is not better than your way, just different." Krathven often sat in on Jake's classes. The old warrior was fascinated by human psychology and evolutionary history. After one session, he spoke with Jake privately. "I understand now why your species succeeded," Krathven said. "You are not the strongest or fastest or most durable. But you are the most stubborn. You simply refuse to stop even when stopping is the logical choice." "Stubbornness is not always good," Jake replied. "Sometimes humans push too far and destroy themselves. We have to learn balance." "All strengths have weaknesses," Krathven agreed. "The key is understanding both." News of Jake's achievement spread beyond the academy. Other species in the galaxy began to take notice of humanity. The reputation of humans as weak and technology-dependent started to shift. Reports came in of human Marines earning respect in joint operations with alien forces. The story of the human who lasted over 7 hours in the Vectari Gauntlet became famous across multiple worlds. 6 months after completing the Crucible, Jake stood in the same arena where he had fought for 7 hours. But this time he was not alone. A dozen human Marines had joined the exchange program. along with Vektari warriors heading to Earth for training. Lisa, promoted to major for her role in the successful exchange program, stood beside him watching the new arrivals begin their training. "You started something important here," she said. "Relations between humans and Vektari have improved more in 6 months than in the previous 10 years. "I just showed them we are not weak," Jake replied. "You showed them we are different," Lisa corrected. "And that different is not lesser. Every species has their own strengths. Now the Vektari understand that." On the training ground below, a human marine ran alongside a Vektari cadet. The human was smaller, weaker, more fragile, but they matched pace step for step, each learning from the other. Jake smiled. This was what he had hoped for. Not dominance or superiority, but understanding and mutual respect. Humans and Vektari were different, but both were warriors in their own right. That evening, Jake joined Zekthral and Krathvin for a meal. The 3 warriors had become unlikely friends over the months. They spoke about training, about philosophy, about the nature of strength. "I have a question," Zekthral said. "In your gauntlet performance, there was a moment around hour 5 where you should have fallen. Your body had nothing left, yet you rose and continued fighting. How?" Jake thought about it carefully. "I cannot fully explain it. My body was finished. My conscious mind was barely functioning, but there is something deeper in humans, something primal. When we are pushed to the absolute limit, when everything says stop, there is a voice that says keep going. Just one more step, just one more second, just a little bit more." "And you listen to this voice?" Krathvin asked. "We cannot help it," Jake said. "It is what makes us human. We see a mountain and we climb it, not because we need to, but because it is there. We run marathon,